Alright, this is for Marta D. Portgas. If I pronounce that wrong, I apologize. You have some great, amazing colors here. The things that I would tell you to do is, right now your lighting is kind of awkward, and it works well because it's radiating out from the center. So everything's kind of, let me just draw you some notes here. So everything's kind of going from outward here. Here's your main light source, and it's radiating to the darker colors. And that's great, but the problem you have is a couple different things. One, the light source doesn't really feel very consistent. You've got basically like your strong light here, and then it fades off, and then that is kind of that aspect. Like here's your awe-inspiring light source, and then that's what you've got to deal with. And so I think in order to kind of fix what you're doing, all I did was I broke up your stuff into kind of separate layers, and so I can lock these layers together a little bit and kind of play with them. But the first thing I would say right off the bat is that you want to really, really define where your light source is coming from. And if it's coming from, and I'm just gonna again show you kind of a note concept here. So if your main layers are like this, and this is from the side view, so your little character is up like this, and he's standing on the rocks, and then you've got another this door here, and you've got like your bridge and things like that. So you've got like some other pieces in here layering your environment, and your light source looks like it's coming straight like this. So it's basically bypassing everything and kind of running into just that one spot, and so that kind of makes it awkward in my opinion. And here's what I would tell you to do from that visual standpoint. So the first thing is I would kind of angle it just a little bit. Like, yes, this is your central focus area, but what I would do is I'd angle that light just a hair so that it gets even brighter. And in this case, I would go and add in, this is your bright source. I'm going to just lock this layer. And so I'm going to add in like just a real shimmer, kind of like so, where that light is hitting the diagonal of that information. So that gives you a little bit more to work with of, there's that light coming in. And then grab some of the light that's not being taken into effect, and see, by breaking this into a darker shadow, you're now getting a much more interesting concept, if you will. And even adding in little things like this, and again, I did a rough cut, so you have to forgive me, but even adding in things like that give it a lot more dimension, and what you're trying to accomplish. I would even kind of look at doing something along the lines of like that, where that light is coming in from an angle. And then what you can do is in the other things here, I'm just going to grab this kind of source. Some of that light can really kind of start falling in there. So now you've got kind of a indented light source like this, and then really take effect of the darks that you're using. So define, like, I don't know, this feels awkward here, like it's almost like a bad door opening. So I would tell you basically to kind of erase this out, and then in this one here, we're going to paint that back in, and paint that in like so. So then from there, that gives you now kind of an implementation that the light is falling from a certain angle. I mean, and you can have, there's a ton of things that you can put in here to kind of really sit down and implement that in. if the light is falling down, and this is why 3D, you know, and Stefan actually got me on 3D. You know, that's why 3D will help you kind of implement your ideas. And you don't have to light everything up. An example is here. I'm just locking this layer, and I'm going to pick your bright light source here, and simply breaking in kind of little bits of pieces like that. See how it's breaking that apart and really kind of separating those elements. And that's what you in all reality, what you want is you want that kind of elemental idea of 3D form. Right now you have your shapes, and it's an atmospheric perspective in shapes, but the shape isn't showing form. You know, especially things like this, where just a simple, you know, a simple like lightened version now shows me a ton more of information in that form. And even up here, I'm going to lock that layer again, where let's grab some of the highlights here, and just again, you can see how that lighting is now, you know, really emphasizing what I'm trying to show. Whereas over here, where the light won't hit it as much, I would use a lot more darker tones to darken that up, and that's going to emphasize, and we can even put some shadow in there, and that's going to emphasize that light direction a lot more. And you know, here where say the light is coming down, we can actually just kind of cut that off, and that way like you see the light coming down, and maybe even doing a little bit of something like this where you've got like kind of that light, you know, casting across, and we're going to angle that a little bit. So I think that's kind of how you want to add in a little bit more form and a little bit more of your elements in there. Even, and you know, even if this isn't twisted like this, I mean, because this is really getting bright as it is, but even adding in a just dark shadow up here, and let's kind of blue this kind of diagonal, you know, just twisting that castle a little bit adds a little bit more emphasis. And the perspective isn't right, of course. I mean, you have to realize that, but the perspective isn't the way it should be. But giving it another sense of what shape you're doing, another plane to look at, is going to really add more complex information to your scene as it is. So I think figuring out that light source and the direction it's coming and what it's casting on is really going to kind of help you out. You know, if it is coming from the side, then we can, you know, kind of angle out some of this stuff, and make it much more developed from that practice. So those are things that I would implement to just really adjust your form and make your stuff a little bit more realistic.
Hey, I wanted to thank everyone for subscribing to my Patreon, and if you haven't yet, check it out.